this lesson video, we will not only be dealing with functions. Here, equations and inequalities will be reintroduced to you. Since junior high school, you've been taught already of the different types of equations, functions, and inequalities such as linear, quadratic, and polynomial. Okay, but this time, we will be dealing with rational expressions. So to get things started, it is important that you know what rational expression is. It is a ratio of two polynomials. How do we describe polynomials? Polynomials are algebraic expressions that are created by combining numbers and variables. Okay, some polynomials have specific names indicated by their prefix, like we have monomial. It has exactly one term. Okay, mono means one. We have also binomial. Bi means two, so it has exactly two terms. We also have trinomial. It has exactly three terms because tri means three. Now, how about 4? Is 4 a polynomial? Think of it. It's a constant term, right? And it's a term without a variable. Bakit naging polynomial? Wala namang variable na katabi. It's because this polynomial is an expression with a degree of 0. This can be expressed as 4x raised to 0. Pero hindi naman na kailangang isali pa ito. Kaya ito na lang. At tinatawag siyang constant term. Now, there are important characteristics of polynomials that you have to always consider. And these were already mentioned to you in Math 10. I certainly hope so. One of its characteristics is the exponent of a variable must be a positive whole number. So it should not involve negative exponents or hindi rin pwede yung fraction na exponent. Okay? Next, it cannot have a variable in the denominator like this one. Say 2 over x plus 3. It's not a polynomial kasi merong variable sa denominator. Okay? Next, it should not also involve variable inside a radical sign, like this one, square root of x plus 2. This is not a polynomial because there is a variable inside the radical sign. So, bawal yan. Now, how do we describe ratio? Of course, it has a numerator and denominator. So, since it is mentioned that rational expression is a ratio of two polynomials, we can say that 3 over 2x is because 3 is a polynomial with a degree of 0. Okay? Then 2x is a polynomial with a degree of 1. So they are both the numerator and the denominator are polynomials. Practice. In this activity, you have to determine whether each expression is a rational expression or not. It's a good idea to pause the video and think of the answer from time to time. Okay, this one. Is it a rational expression or not? It's a rational expression. Next. This expression is not because it has a negative exponent. And bawal yan. Okay? That is one of the characteristics of a polynomial expression. A polynomial expression does not include negative exponent. How about this one? It is not a rational expression because 3x raised to 1 over 3 is not a polynomial. Because again, a polynomial does not contain fraction in the exponent. How about this one? 1 over x plus 2 over x minus 2. You might think that this is not a rational expression. But look at this one. Let's try to manipulate this expression. We have 1 divided by x plus 2 over x minus 2. Applying the rule, we have to get the reciprocal of this and change the operation into multiplication. So we have 1 times x minus 2 over x plus 2. So numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. So 1 times x minus 2 is clearly x minus 2. 1 times x plus 2 is clearly also x plus 2. So this is now the resulting expression. So can we now consider this as a rational expression or still not? It's a rational, okay? So you still have to try manipulating the expression for you to verify if it's a rational expression na talaga or hindi. Next, obviously it's not a rational expression because it has a variable inside the radical sign. Last, x squared plus 4x minus x square root of 3. Is this a polynomial expression? Try to recall the characteristics of a polynomial expression. It's a rational. Kasi ang nandun lang naman, bawal yung variable sa loob ng radical sign. Pero hindi naman sinabi na bawal na nasa loob ng radical sign ang number. Okay? Now that rational expression is already clear to you, we can now distinguish rational function, equation, and inequalities. Now look at this one. This example is under what? What do you think? Under ba siya ng rational function, rational equation, or rational inequalities? It's an example of a rational equation. And rational equation is defined as an equation involving rational expressions. How about the second example? It is an example of, obviously it's an example of rational inequality because it is an inequality involving rational expressions. Lastly, of course, it's an example of rational function. And it is a function of the form f of x equal to p of x over q of x, where p of x and q of x are polynomials. And q of x is not a zero function because the denominator of a rational expression should not be equal to 0 because it will become what? It will become undefined. Okay? Now these three examples involve rational expressions. What similarities and differences can you see between rational equation and rational inequalities? How do we compare and contrast RE and RI? Okay, RE and RI involve rational expressions. They both have only one variable, which is x. And if you can notice, RE uses symbol for equality, which is an equal sign, while RI uses symbol for inequality. What are those other symbols for inequality? We have greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Now, how do we distinguish RF from the first two, RE and RI? RF uses an equal sign, just like in RE. But RF involves two variables, the X and Y variables. Now, take note of this one. A rational equation and inequality can be solved for all X values that satisfy the equation or inequality. Kumbaga, ang focus natin sa rational equation and inequality ay paghanap ng value or values ng X kung saan magiging true itong equation or itong inequality. On the other hand, we do not solve functions. Its focus is to see the relationship between two variables. How the variable X affects the variable Y. So, yan yung focus ng rational function. Tinitingnan lang kung paano naapektuhan ng value ng X yung value ng Y. Let's have a practice. In this activity, you just have to determine whether the given is a rational function, rational equation, rational inequality, or none. Okay, let's have this. You may pause the video. Okay, I hope you've taken a pause. This is an example of a rational function. Why? Because it has two variables, the X and Y, and it uses an equal sign. Next, it uses an equal sign and it has only one variable, so it is an example of a rational equation. Next, also it has only one variable, which is X, and it uses an equal sign, therefore it is also an example of a rational equation. How about this one? The answer is none. Bakit kaya? Because this is not a polynomial expression. As you can notice, there is a variable inside the radical sign. Next, it involves two variables. It uses an equal sign, but look at this one. It involves a variable inside the radical sign. So the same thing with this one. So the answer is none. Lastly, it has only one variable, which is X, and it uses greater than or equal to. So obviously, it is an example of a rational inequality. So I hope I am making this topic a piece of cake for you. Okay, we're done with the introduction. Let's jump now into rational function. And this is the question that we're going to get into on the next slides. What real-life applications would illustrate rational functions? So I'm going to give you three simple applications of rational functions. Okay, let's start off with this one. An object is to travel a distance of 10 meters. Express velocity as a function of travel time in seconds. In physics, how can we determine the velocity of an object? Its velocity is equal to distance over time. But this problem is asking you to express velocity as a function of travel time. How are we going to write the function? Its v of t is equal to 10 over t. Velocity as a function of travel time. And where did we get this value? It's right here. Meron kasing given na distance. We have already the function. But as what I've mentioned to you earlier, our focus here is to determine the relationship between the two variables. Here, the two variables are the distance and the time. Now, how are we going to determine the relationship between these two variables? We have to construct a table of values. Assign any values of x, okay? So in this case, we have assigned 1, 2, 4, 5, and 10. To get the values of y, we simply substitute each of the assigned values in t to the function one at a time. Okay, so let's do it. Let's start with this. V of 1 is equal to 10 over 1. The result is 10. Then same procedure, we get this. After completing the table, we can now see the relationship between these two variables. How can we interpret this? Observe the values. As the time in seconds increases, anong nangyayari sa velocity? The velocity decreases. So again, as the time in seconds increases, the velocity decreases. For example, pinagulong nyo yung bola. Sa unang mga segundo, mabilis pa siya. Pero habang tumatagal, habang umaandar yung oras, pabagal ng pabagal yung gulong ng bola. Sana naintindihan. Okay, example number 2. Suppose the amount of bacteria growing in a petri dish is represented by the function b of t is equal to 50t over t plus 1, given this interval, where t is in hours and b of t is in millions, or the number of bacteria. As you can see here, the function is already given. Sometimes the function is already given in the problem, but sometimes you will be the one to create. Now, in order for us to determine the relationship between the time in hours and the number of bacteria growing in a petri dish, we have to construct again a table of values. And the values for t were already indicated. Observe that the indicated values 1, 2, 5, 10, 15, and 20 match up with the given interval. That's very important. Since may given na interval, which is this one, kung sakaling kayo mismo yung mag-a-assign ng values 40, dapat pasok siya sa interval ng given. Dapat from 0 hanggang 20 lang siya. To get the values of b of t, just do the substitution. Let's try 1. So b of 1 is equal to 50 times 1 over 1 plus 1. So we have 50 over 1 plus 1 is 2. Then 50 divided by 2 is 25. Then same procedure, we have this. After completing the table of values, what can you now conclude? Therefore, as time in hours increases, the amount of bacteria also increases. The two variables are directly proportional. How about the first example? Balikan natin. So in this case, the two variables are inversely proportional. Because as time in seconds increases, the velocity decreases. Pataas yung values ng isang variable habang papaba naman yung values ng isa pang variable. Okay, let's have this last example. The local barangay received a budget of 100,000 pesos to provide medical checkups for the children in the barangay. Meron daw na-receive itong barangay na ito na 100,000 pesos na budget para sa medical check-ups ng kabataan na nandyan sa barangay. The amount is to be allotted equally among all the children in the barangay. So, yung na-receive nilang 100,000 na budget ay hahatiin equally or pantay-pantay sa kung ilang bata meron iyang barangay na yan. Now, you are asked to write an equation representing the relationship of the allotted amount per child, or the variable y, versus the total number of children, or the variable x. What do you think now is the function? Take note of this ha. Yung 100,000 pesos, hahati-hatiin sa kung ilang bata meron ang barangay na yan. So, think of the function. It's y is equal to 100,000 over x, where y stands for the allotted amount per child, while the variable x stands for the number of children. Magdedepende yung allotted amount per child sa kung ilan lahat-lahat ng bata meron iyang barangay na yan. Sige, let's continue constructing the table of values. Assign values for x. In this case, we have 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, 500, and 1,000. Kahit ano naman yung values dito. Okay? Now, let's complete the table para ma-verify natin kung ano ba yung relationship ng dalawang variables. Let's have this one. Y is equal to 100,000 over 10. So, if x is 10, the allotted amount per child is 10,000 pesos. Same procedure, we get all of these values. What can we conclude now? As the number of children increases, ano nangyayari sa allotted amount per child? The allotted amount per child decreases. Are the variables directly or inversely proportional? They are inversely proportional. Ilinaw ko lang ha, ang directly proportional, same direction. Kung pataas yung values ng isang variable, pataas din yung values ng isa pang variable. Kung pababa yung values ng isang variable, pababa rin yung values ng isa pang variable. But when we say inversely, they have opposite directions. As one variable decreases, the other variable increases. On the other hand, as one variable increases, the other variable decreases. Okay, that's it. I hope you learned something in this lesson video.